Wacky Wednesday. Wacky Wednesday.
It's Wacky Wednesday con El Bumper.
Unfiltered. The real deal. No pre-planning. No chingaderas. Straight up from the bill.
Wacky Wednesday.
B-Town's very own.
It's Wacky Wednesday con El Bumper.
Here's your host, Bumper Gomez.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to another edition of Bumper's Wacky Wednesday. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you're tuning in for the first time, welcome to the show. My name is Mr. Bumper Gomez, and I do this show every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. right here on Facebook Live. Again, it's your first time tuning in. Thank you so much for tuning in. Tonight's going to be a great show, man. Something very, 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 very different. But I'm looking forward. I'm really, really looking forward to talking with this gentleman and, getting to know him a little more. I forewarned him a little bit. I forewarned him and told him that, that he's following up about 6 weeks of Tex-Mex artists, one after another, after another, after another. So something totally different. Again, the show is Bumper's Wacky Wednesday. You never know what you're going to get, who you're going to talk to, and what we're going to talk about. But as I have Lou's name already up there. You saw that, Lou? See, that's another rookie move. Still haven't got this down yet. But no, man, tonight is going to be a very, very cool and interesting show for sure. I met Lou through a mutual friend. Shout out to Mr. James Carter, Sarge. Hope you're doing all right, buddy. Wherever you might be, you're all over the place all the time. So shout out to James, and for introducing us. But me being a veteran and serving, quite some time. In the military, a little bit, served a little bit of time in the military. Tonight's show really is going to be something very heartwarming for myself. And again, if I know the 6 weeks have been nothing but just straight music, tonight just something different. You know what I mean? Kick back, relax. If you're a history buff, this guy right here is the guy you want to talk to right here. So without further ado, my guest this evening is none other than, of course, I'm going to murder his name. I already told him, I already warned him, is Mr. Lou Baczewski. Did I say it right, Lou?
That's really close. It's a tough name. So if I had a tough time with people pronouncing my name wrong, I would have had a tough life. I mean, because it's a toughie. Too many consonants and a lot going on there.
I got you. Lou, where are you? See, you're not in the studio, so again, you're not in San Antonio, Texas. Where are you located right now?
I'm in St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Louis, Missouri. Okay. What's the weather there like right now?
Oh, it's a little kind of sticky, a little humid, a little rain, but it's been nice, spring weather.
A little bit like South Texas right now. It's always sticky, man, for sure. It's always sticky here, sticky and warm. Lou, it was pretty cool how we met, dude. Like literally, Carter. I always used to call him. I forgot the movie, but Mr. Carter. You remember Mr. Carter? He was like the principal.
Carter, yeah.
I can't remember what movie.
Welcome back, Carter. Sorry.
Yeah, one of those, but they called him Carter, like they just had an accent. I always used to call him that.
Yeah, John Travolta was in that. Yeah. Welcome back, Carter.
So so I got with Carter one day. He called me. He's like, "Hey man, we're putting a video together for me and Staff Sergeant Carter used to work together at the Wounded Warrior Battalion here in San Antonio." And for those of you that don't know, like I I don't know. I really haven't really talked about my military background, to be honest with you. In the year of doing this show, I've touched on little pieces here and there, but I've never really done a show just dedicated to anything military in a sense. But I know a little bit. You know, I know a little bit about the military, a little bit of military background. Our my my own me and my kids we're a big military family, and when I was talking to Carter and I was telling him about, and Carter's big on music stuff, so he's really digging what I was doing, and he's like, "Bro, I got this guy," and I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I got this guy, and you it would be a cool show." And he's like, "Well, what do you talk?" I said, "Well, we talk about anything and everything." He's like, "Dude, this dude would be really cool. He has an interesting story," and he started sending me all this stuff. Right, I'm like, "God dang, Carter, that's a lot of stuff, right?" And busy with work and life, you know what I mean? You just, I like to just sit down and look at things. And this over the weekend, I pinned through the book, and then late last night I watched your movie. And like I told you, Lou, before, man, that movie is freaking amazing. Like, if you're really like especially if you're a military history buff, like I'm telling you, this guy is the movie itself is great. And what is it? It's about an hour and 50 minutes long, correct? Right, Lou? Right around there.
Right. It's a hour and 45 content, and then about 5 minutes of credits running.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
about an hour.
Lou, where did you enough about that, right? Enough about me, but where did you actually grow up at?
Well, in and around St. Louis, I grew up on the east side of the river in Illinois, but lived most of my life around St. Louis. But when you're saying though enough about you though, it does really mean a lot to hear from someone who served like yourself for as long as you did, that you appreciate and respect the movie, because that was one of my main goals with the whole thing, was that veterans would appreciate it, as opposed to so much of the stuff that comes out of Hollywood too consistently that most people that serve hate. So that does mean a lot. But I grew up in Illinois, uh, and my grandfather, he lived in Collinsville, and we also lived in Collinsville. I grew up there, but he grew up in a small town, Pocahontas, Illinois, a little bit out in the country away from Collinsville. And we used to fish together, and that's where the whole story started. Actually, uh, he taught me how to catfish on this like small kind of muddy creek that most people wouldn't even bother to fish in. But that's where he grew up as a boy, kind of like Huck Finn type living. It was during the Depression, and they didn't have much. They're very very poor, and so most of his time he spent out in the woods and doing things like that. So he showed myself and the rest of the grandkids in the family how to fish and stuff. And then sometimes late at night, we would always hope, or I'd ask my dad, like I said, man, maybe Grandpa might tell a story tonight. We'd always hope that. And sometimes he felt comfortable enough to open up, and he was very modest. He would just say, "Oh, I was just a tanker." But as I came to know, and as you could see in the film, he he wasn't just a tanker. He was the tank driver of the only known, or at least documented, American tank to make it from Normandy to central Germany in the same Sherman. And that was unprecedented.
Dude, when I think I forgot the number. There's a number, but then I think it was only like 17 guys, if I'm not mistaken.
When they,
Something
when
like
they
that.
when they started, they had in his company, D Company of the 33rd Armored Regiment, they had 152 men, and by the end of the war, it was only he and 17 other guys. That was it.
That for the viewers, man, when you guys turn the TV on, you watch the History Channel, You watch an old school war movie. You watch what's the one that they made the series of I'm having
Band
a
of
brain
Brothers.
fart. Band of Brothers. You watch all these things and you watch the movies, but I don't think it's me personally, because I'm sure there's people that do this, but I really don't think that sometimes people really think about that. Like what you just said, 150 something people started
No,
this journey, right?
no, not enough. I think people are too disconnected from it. People are too, they're, hate to say, a bit spoiled today, myself included. You just if you don't live it, you don't know it. That's why history sadly repeats itself, and that's why I felt this was such an important story to tell. And it's not just um, a story about one person. It's a story about, and that's what was important to him to share. It wasn't about him. It was about all these other people that didn't make it and all the things that he saw and did, like through his own eye. He was kind of like Forrest Gump, a little bit. He had his foot in all this crazy history, uh, and he didn't even really know the content of all of it until we started working together and researching it. And I think he he shelved all this stuff away for very valid reasons. It was very tough to talk about, but it was therapeutic to him in the long run, because instead of it being kind of all these scattered, uh, haunting memories, it was now a cohesive thing that he could understand what his impact was, and he was part of something big. And he thanked me, to his dying day, which was hard to even accept, from a guy like him. It was like, don't be thanking me, you're the one that went through it, So it was a very humbling experience, and I just wish most people could have an experience like that, to know someone like him who was just a very humble human being. And I've heard the term post traumatic growth, and actually my friend James Peterson, who's in the movie, talks about that, and that actually was a Marine.
Yeah, as a Marine guy.
A Marine
Yeah.
that came up with that term, but he was kind of the poster child for that, if you will. I mean, he really was a great human being, and for him to uh, share this story and be willing to do it, willing to go through all that, I thought it's very important, because I do a lot of veterans events and different things, and I've tried to raise money for different charities, and
Yeah.
I speak at different things, and always invariably someone always comes up to me and says, my dad would never talk, or my grandfather would never speak to me about the war, or that maybe they'd find a box of medals, or different memories from the war, and they have nothing within details from them. So I just feel it's so important to share this.
You know, I find so much similarity, in what you're saying. I can, I really, uh, in your grandfather's shoes. My kids have bothered me and bugged me and bothered me and bugged me to sit down and tell them, and you know what, I never did. And as they got older, they kind of they not that they held it against me, but they just kind of like, yeah, Dad, I really wish you would, when I hear you talk to your friends, it's different. It's like when I'm around guys who chewed the same dirt as me, you can be a little more open, and because they in a sense, in a veteran's mind, because they understand, they've been there, they know what it smells like, they know what it feels like, all those things, you know what I mean, and you can connect. And then I think looking down, maybe talking to my grandson, my granddaughter, or my one of my sons or one of my daughters, I don't know. Like I can't see myself having a very detailed conversation about anything that I've seen. So I can really grasp where your grandfather was coming from in a sense of opening up. And I want to talk a little bit about, you know, Lou, the movie, because I just found it fascinating. And I hope you don't take offense of us talking about the movie, thinking they're going to take away from people watching the movie.
No, not at all. I'm not concerned about
Definitely
that.
the movie. What I really loved about the film that you know produced, you directed, you wrote, was where it began. Where it began, right? Like where it began. You know, you and him fishing. You talked about catfishing in a little creek. Pocahontas is the name of the town in Illinois, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So down in Pocahontas, Illinois, and it brings so much nostalgia to me because I'm from a small town. You know what I mean?
Oh,
I joined with a bunch of my friends, and maybe we didn't find each other, you know, in combat, but we found each other, you know, on the other side of the world. Matter of fact, 3 weeks ago, one of my good friends is they were burying their father, and I went down to Beeville and visited them, and we were talking. I hadn't talked to one of the brothers who was in the Marine Corps with me. How before cell phones, before computers, we found each other on Okinawa. You know, spread out from one top of the island to the southern tip of the island, and we all found each other somehow, some way, and we found a way to get together and have some drinks and just, you know, reminisce of being back home. And it just felt good to see somebody that you knew, you know, being so far away. So in one part of the movie where Luch, right, your grandfather, where he finds his buddy and he gets off the tank, man, and I'm choking up right now. Honestly, I'm really choking up, like just thinking about it, because I could just,
yeah.
I was imagining him in his peripheral vision. I could just see a tanker going, and just kind of in this little, the little bit of view that he did have, he sees something. He's like, there's no effing way. Like, there's no freaking way that Joe Blow from, you know, from my hometown is right over here. And he gets off the tank, and he walks down the line, and I think he walks up to him, and he says something like, you know, he tells him, well, what a place to meet, right? You know what I mean? So far away from home. What a you know, place to see each other. And you know, lo and behold, they had been fighting next to each other the whole time.
The whole time, and they
You know,
didn't know. Yeah.
I could really associate to that. You know what I mean? I really could. And you know, to the viewers, it's just I mean, think about that. You're in a country that you have no idea where you're at. No, you know, you're far away from home, and you just see that one piece of home. Just seeing somebody else that knows the same place you're from, that went to the same school you had, that went to the same fishing hole that you fished at. It just it reminds you that home is still there. You know what I mean? Home is still there. So I found that to be just really, really amazing part of the story. Like it was very touching. But Lou, you are like all over the place, bro. You wrote this movie, you directed the movie, and you're I think you're a history teacher.
Well, I was a certified as a history teacher,
There you
but
go.
I ended up in a roundabout way teaching technical skills. I taught industrial technology.
Got you.
uh,
Got you.
Bank.
Um, you know,
But if you don't mind, though, about the story that you're talking about, if I just say one thing, but like that was the coolest thing was to be able to tell that story like through his own voice, because I had those on tapes, and it still touches me, even like just hearing somebody talk about it, because you know, that was one of his favorite stories. And what he says, even at the time, he said, it's like, damn, there's somebody from Pokey. You know, he said it was
yeah,
one of those. It was one of the most redeeming like things that happened during the war. I mean, I can't. He was in the Hurricane Forest, which was a really bloody, horrible campaign, and it was actually the bloodiest for the Americans. There were more American soldiers killed in that campaign than any other American camp of the five major campaigns in the European theater of operations.
That was where the most were killed.
That was the bloodiest for the Americans. And so, yeah, but back to what you're saying about the book and so forth. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No, you're
cut.
good. You're good.
That story just meant a lot to him. So it definitely strikes a chord with me every time, even despite making the movie and writing the book. It's just such a cool story. It must have been just remarkable to be right in the middle of that stuff and just look out and go, damn, that guy's from my heart. Just to be in absolute hell and then see somebody, and they both survived. They both lived through. He said we drank a lot of beers over that one. Years later, they spent a
I'm
lot.
sure they did, man.
Talking about that, like, God, he said he looked over and he goes, God damn, Luch. He goes, it's a hell of a place to run into one another. He said it was artillery coming in and all
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
I could just imagine.
People.
I have a share a quick story with you. We were in January 6th, I believe, January 6th, 2003. I left Camp Pendleton. Me and 15 other Marines from 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, we left. We were the first 15 Marines to leave from our battalion advance party to go into, what later on would be the invasion of Iraq, right? We got on the Kuwaiti border, the Kuwaiti-Iraqi border. So we get out there, man, and we're out there probably 3 weeks, Lou, and, there's no showers. There's no big white tents that you saw in the movies. There's, we're literally in 2-man tents, living out in the middle of nowhere. Like there's no roads, there's nothing. And they're bringing in all this equipment and we're supposed to be, testing this equipment and the vehicles and get everything ready so when our battalion does show up, we're locked and loaded and ready to go, right? So we're MRE'd out, man. I mean, 3 weeks of 3 MREs a day, and it's just it sucks, and then all of a sudden, dude, just like in like a movie, just picture the movie, a mirage, right? You see this plum of smoke of dust just coming towards you. And it's coming toward our camp, which is secure. Like we have guys walking around with loaded weapons. You know what I mean? There's nobody out there but us. And this Humvee it finally gets closer. We realize it's a Humvee and it's coming hauling ass. Like it's not following the path that was already set in place that people were bringing stuff. So this vehicle's coming. And it's coming over the sand dune and it comes down. And so everybody stops what they're doing and they're just staring like, what idiot is driving like a madman, and they're coming right for us. And all of a sudden, this guy gets out and he's talking to another unit that's out there, another 15 guys from a different battalion. And then they're like, hey, they're looking for Stasar Gomez. And he's like, they're a little bit further. So I see him get back in the vehicle and he starts driving through everybody's stuff. And he pulls up and it's my best man from my wedding, right? Who is in a support unit, I'm talking about 35 miles, desert miles away. 35 miles in the desert with no roads you got to be a crazy SOB, right? To just put a point on your GPS and say, hey, I'm going to get there, right? No roads. So this guy shows up and I see him and he's walking out with a case of Coca-Colas and 2 cases of Vienna sausages. Right? Yeah. And he walks up to me. He goes, here, man. I saw that you guys were out here on the map. I went into where I was at. I said, hey, where's 2-5? They're out here. So he got another Marine, and they just they stole the vehicle and literally drove across Kuwait and brought me sodas and canned weenies. I call them canned weenies, right? So then, dude, it was the funniest thing. I mean, literally, and then we still laugh about it to this day. My shout out to my buddy Tigo out there in Florida. Yeah, man, he showed up just like a ghost, like a mirage, bro. Just showed up with sodas and canned Vienna sausages. And for me, that was gold, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't gonna have to eat MRE. I could eat some canned Vienna sausages and a cold drink. So just seeing, but he had actually brought a book that my wife had given him and a beanie that I had forgotten. He lived in my neighborhood. And he left, weeks after I did. and he made it a point that he was going to find me, right? He knew that if we were going to invade and go, he was never going to catch us because we were going to be in the front, right? So he caught us in the rear there, and it was just cool, man. It just kind of reminded me of that, like seeing somebody from home, how it feels. Like, oh man, you know what I mean? I'm not the only knucklehead out here. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
But Lou, that's enough about that. But you know, the stories, dude, that what I found amazing about the movie, honestly, was how crazy you are. And I don't think I think if you watch the movie, you don't catch it unless you really think about what you're doing. It's like I told you when we were off air, you know, you went and bought did you buy the bike over there or you took it with you?
Oh, I took that bike. It was an older bike that I had, and well, it wasn't the greatest bike either. Like people that actually touring bike would laugh at what bike I took over there. I mean, it was kind of an old hunk of junk. I mean, but it was, I mean, a decent bike, but like somebody that actually does touring biking, they would have
Right.
a way better rig. You know, like if some different touring biking people that I passed were like, "What the hell is this guy
Yeah.
doing?" But, yeah, it was just honestly in 2014 I saw that I'd written the book, and it was like I had it done in like 2011, 2010, a rough draft, and I kept submitting it to people, and most of the publishers, they didn't want to publish it in the form that I wanted, because I wanted to have a lot of those family stories in there. I wanted to have
Right.
the fishing story, you know, because I I thought, you know, so much of Hollywood and everything else, it'll just tell like the action, and you don't get to know like the human being. And to me, you know, my grandfather was this really awesome person.
Yeah.
It's like I wanted people to see who he was full spectrum, and I didn't think it did justice, because people wanted to like market it. You know, they got to say, well, oh, okay, is it just a military story? You can't put like fishing stories in a military story. You know, like well, why not? It's the story, you know. But
It's
so
my story. I can put it the way I want to put it.
I, I eventually independently published it in 2013 after some decent offers, but I just thought it was better that way. And then about a little around a year later, that movie Fury came out about tankers, and um, I was just appalled at like how it depicted tank crews, and then I was also pretty astonished at how many similarities it was to my real grandfather's story. Because there's this tank that makes it all the way through Europe, and that was exactly what my grandfather's tank did, and was the only documented case of an American Sherman crew making it all the way from Normandy to central Germany. So that lit a fire under me to make this film, you know, because I thought, well, I want to show what real tankers, not some Hollywood version of what they went through, as far as I understood.
Right.
And you know, because I talked to both my grandfather and then Les Underwood was a gunner in his tank, and I had the opportunity to speak with both of them at length, and they told me things that they never told any other person. You know, they just opened up about it, and I think the reason they did open up about it was I didn't just go in and say, "Hey, what did you do in the war?" I did a lot of my due diligence of really trying to get a lot of details of, you know, where they were, and so I could ask uh, very specific questions, as opposed to some like, "Hey, tell me all about what you went through," and who wants to, you know, start at the beginning and explain all these details. So I think it just went better when they felt I had a sound understanding of at least the basics,
Right.
and from there they opened up. But what you're saying about the biking, though, it really was kind of crazy. People were like, "You're nuts." I don't speak French. I speak like
I mean, that's what makes, you know, being on Wacky Wednesday, dude, and anything goes on here, right? You were doing a Wacky Wednesday bike ride, bro. I mean, you had no translator. You're showing up to people's restaurants and, small towns, and you're having these conversations, but you find a way to get through. Like I just saw it over and over again, the different interactions you had with different people. you found a way to get through. And then once they realized why you were there, I mean, it was just unbelievable to see the love that people had for you and embraced you, and they were taking you like, you know, I really loved the parts where you would show them a picture of something, right? And then they would take you and be like, yeah, that's right here. And you're like, well, there's no, it's, you know, I mean, it's happened, you know, how many years ago? 60 years ago, 70 years ago? No.
Well, yeah, at the time it was 72 year. We already passed the 75th anniversary. So yeah, it's a, well, what is
You
it
know,
now?
so again, with time, the places have changed, but there was really some parts that it really hadn't. You know what I mean? Like when you described the roads, you know what I mean, and the roads being the way they were the way they were, and there you are riding a bike, and sure enough, I mean, you call it, you know, you see it like, hey, this is an issue, right? You know what I mean? And towards the beginning of the movie, Lou, and again, you're on Wacky Wednesday, bro. So I go back and forth and here and now, just as stuff pops in my head, I go with it before I forget it. How old were you, Lou? How old were you when you think that you had a decent conversation with your grandfather, in a sense that he had just, other than saying, yes, I was in World War II, yes, I was a tanker, right? Do you remember, can you remember back to the time that you walked away and be like, hey man, whoa, my grandfather's never opened up to me like that before? How old were you?
Probably one of the most like pivotal moments that made me realize I need to like know more. And I was younger, and then I kind of went back and forth on it, but I was probably maybe 14 or 15, and we just had a real tight connection. We were fishing. We would go and catch bait fish, like, you know, smaller, like big minnows, to go and use to catch catfish. And so we were walking through this tunnel. There was a culvert down the road that had a small creek just up the road from his house. And unfortunately, I couldn't put this in a documentary, but it's probably one of the most powerful stories. It's in the book, but it's not in a film. And we're walking through this concrete culvert with a little stream running through it to get to this spot where we could catch the bait fish with minnows or some worms. And we
Is that you?
no, it's not me.
Oh man, I don't know what the heck that was.
All good?
Yeah, we're
still
good.
functioning?
We're good.
Okay, cool. So we were walking through that tunnel, and on my grandfather's right, he kind of stopped and was kind of looking at something up on the wall that was painted, and I just saw like red paint till I got a little closer, and there was a giant swastika across the side of that culvert, and this is just, you know, a few blocks down from his house, and we had just, you know, taken his truck up there to fish, and he just stood there and just stared at it, just really quietly for a while, and I didn't say anything. I just kind of was like, you know, curious as to why he was transferring, and I knew vaguely what it meant, but I didn't know much at the time. To me, it was, you know, it's just a symbol, and I know it related to the war, but he was just blank and stare, you know, and I can't, you know, now when I think about what was going through that man's head when he is fishing with his grandson and sees this symbol that created so much hate and death and lost so many friends. All the pictures and images that must have been going through his head at that moment, and then standing there with his grandson. He didn't even turn. He just said, you know, I bet the kid that painted that doesn't have any goddamn idea what that thing means. And he was a very religious man, so he didn't even usually say that. You know, he didn't cuss much, but he was just baffled at that. And so that made me want to learn more. And I, you know, in time, we started to have conversations. And, you know, at the moment, it was kind of innocuous, but I knew it was there was something powerful there that he wasn't telling me. And in time, we just started at first it started with doing interviews about, funny things growing up with Pocahontas, and he would tell maybe funny stories about the war. But at a point, just like James Peterson says, Marine, who's an expert on post-traumatic stress, that kind of was part of the film. He said, it was just like a dam that broke, and I think he honestly, I think he felt he needed to tell it because so many of his friends died, and he received a Bronze Star at the end of the war from command of General Hickey, and I asked him about that. He said I think they just gave me that because they knew I had, I lived, like in so many of the other guys didn't. They lost so many officers. He said that they had lieutenants that literally lasted minutes because that Sherman had such poor visibility through the periscope that they would have to stick their head out most of the time to actually acquire targets. And he said, so they would get their heads blown off, consistently. That's how his tank commander and a lot of his really good friends and officers were lost as well.
I want to tell you, Lou, and I'm sure you've spoken to other veterans, but it must have taken a lot of courage, a lot of just inner strength to as your buddy on the movie said, to open up that floodgate. Because
it really, and yeah, I thought I had a healthy respect and understanding. Like, I've gotten a lot of compliments about the book. Even one of the fellows that's in the film, he's a Yale-educated historian, teaches at Penn State. He said it's one of the best books written about armored warfare in the European theater of operations. And I've had, like, even General Thomas Griffin wrote a very great review about it. You have to read this for. So I would think, I have a decent understanding, but you have to keep humble about such things. Like it was extremely humbling to go to Europe and actually go from city to city and see the pictures that they had that weren't sent back to the States, that a lot of that stuff was kept out of the eye of the American people. And when I looked at that, I'm like, it just showed me I don't know anything. Even though I know a little more than the average guy about this, I don't know what it was like for him. I have never any idea. I have a better inkling and a respect for it. But if anybody suggests that they have any idea what that was to go through all that, they're full of crap. I mean, I just can't imagine going city to city and seeing the destruction that they did and surviving it. I like just the aerial bombardments and the artillery and the constant, like they were never even pulled off the line for any significant amount of time. Like in say like Band of Brothers, they got shipped back. They'd go back to England. They'd do another drop. Not to take anything away from those guys. I mean, they're all heroes.
No, yeah. I mean, but
I don't mean it
consistently. They were in there consistently.
They were stuck. You can't rotate out a tank crew. They're there. The tank's there, and it's up front. So. And I don't think any movie or anything has really done justice to what they had to go through. And
but to be honest, Lou, could any movie, could any director ever give it the justice? No way. There's no way. There's nothing more than there's
that's very true.
Being there and having somebody describe it to you, you can only picture it, and you brought up a very good point. Us as Americans, I think we're very sheltered. Our history books, you open up a history book nowadays with social media and YouTube and stuff, you can read great documentaries like yourselves. You can do all these things, but it's never going to be, as realistic as hearing it from somebody, that was there. One
Right.
thing that really stuck out to me in the movie, and I just kept thinking about it, like, wow, was the smell, right? Like the smell of death, the smell of going into a town where, everything is demolished. Germans had gone through and killed. I think that was brought up in the movie. People were mutilated. You know what I mean? And we say that people were mutilated. We're like, oh, okay, you walk into a town, people are, but, dude, I think we're in a tornado warning right now.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Hold on. Let me make sure. I don't want to fly away live on Facebook.
No, I don't blame you at all.
Is anybody out there? Lena?
Are they all in the basement already?
Dude,
They
we don't
must
have
be.
a basement down here, bro. So,
Oh, it's Texas. Yeah, I'm forgetting.
hey,
No,
hey guys. So if you see me just like disappear, hey, we'll this will be a video of what happened. I guess. I don't know. This is getting pretty. That's like this. Remember, I was like, "Is that you or is that me?"
yeah, it's not me.
We have severe storms coming through here, so man, I don't know. I guess when I hear the wind blasting, we'll cut it short. But no, Lou, I think that I'll give your movie just the documentary, talking to those people and them showing you pictures and then kind of walking you through the places and to hear, about the smell. Like people used to just, that was the first thing when they came to the town. I forgot which, is it St. Pew or St.
Saint Paul.
St. Paul.
Well, I think the gentleman that said that was in Falaise.
Falaise. Yeah, that's what it is.
Battle of Falaise. He has a museum there, and he kindly spoke. But he's an expert on what happened there, and
And he talked about the flies, dude. He talked about the flies.
Thousands of testimonies.
Just he said there was just a cloud and swarm of flies, and to me was, I was just picturing that, like, man, dude, wow.
Yeah, at Falaise there was an estimated like somewhere around maybe 10,000 Germans that were killed there in this narrow corridor. And they were strafed and bombed and trapped from the north by the British and Polish and French troops, and then the Americans coming up from the south. And it was a bloodbath. They literally bulldozed those soldiers into mass graves. It was one of Eisenhower actually came and viewed the battle just a couple days afterwards and said it was literally the worst thing that he had ever seen in the war. Later, like 20 years after the war, he was giving a speech and said it was the most gruesome thing. He said you could literally walk for hundreds of yards on nothing but dead and decaying flesh. It was just that's. I mean, if anybody wants to bother to think about what that would look like, but.
And again, I think as Americans, we're sheltered to that. Like, what I mean? That's not the things that and another point that you brought, it was a great point in the movie, was the fact that as Americans, we've been in so many wars, right? But the war is always in somebody else's yard.
Right.
Us as Americans don't know what the yard looks like.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have people dying in the creek behind your house, by the thousands, and you try to hunker down, right? And the war moves through, and then you go through, and there's hundreds of dead people. You know what I mean? Like that, we can't fathom that. Like that can never happen here in the United States.
Right.
So.
Well,
man, I have
We are. Are you going to have to cut it short? Or
No,
please?
I'm gonna hold off till one of my neighbors comes knocking or something. I don't know, bro. I'm a Marine. Come on, come on. But no, man. It really fascinated me the way that you went about doing the story. Because anybody could have walked over there and say, hey, I'm going to visit this town. I'm going to do something. You went on the bike, and
Yeah.
and the other there's little things that you do, and I don't know if you did them on purpose, but for me, they're just so. What's the word? They're so bland the way you say them, but it has so much detail. When you talk about, hey, I rode. There was a part where you were like, yeah, I just rode from here to there, and it took me 45 minutes on a bike. But it took them 3 months to move that same link that you did in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, these guys were fighting. People were dying for inches of earth.
Right. Through some horrible circumstances. It just, that Hurricane Forest was one of the, like I said, one of the bloodiest campaign, and that was where that was specifically. I mean, it was like trench warfare. It was like World War One type stalemate, and I think probably one of the most profound things that I took away from it is that the Europeans are surrounded by landmarks and things from war, whereas maybe there's a Civil War battlefield maybe in somebody's town or something like that, but there's not the landmarks. There's still ramparts of tank installations, pillboxes, other types of tank traps, stuff in almost everybody's town. Everywhere they look, there's marks of the war. There's places everywhere where you can see where these embattlement, these huge things that the Germans built, for the West Wall and all that all across. We have nothing like that here. And what I think was probably the most profound or part of that is that everyone was affected by the war there. Whereas, whereas Americans, Marines, soldiers, airmen, Navy, they headed over and they came back, and a lot of them were tight-lipped, as most of that generation was. But over there, it wasn't just the military people being affected. It was, little kids, grandmothers, everybody on every level. The older people might have been dragooned into being slave laborers for the Germans, depending on which city or country you lived in, especially in Poland. I mean, they were pulled out in droves and worked to death in many cases. So everyone was affected by it in a way that we have no concept of here, unless you try to bother to care. And unfortunately, most people, don't. They don't step outside of the confines of, what's being, sent out in the media waves. What's on Instagram today or what have you.
Must be getting closer, Lou. Must be getting closer.
Yeah, they're more consistent.
They're more consistent now.
Yeah, they're getting closer. Although when you said, "Hey, I'm a Marine. I'm gonna dig this out. I'm gonna hack this out," it made me think of, I was outside of this city, Shireen, and it was raining when we were filming, and it was lightning going on. And in Shireen, Grandpa's outfit actually got wiped out. There were 10 tanks that went in January of 1945, and by the end of that battle, it was only his tank that was left. And so I was actually coming up that road, and it was storming and raining, and the cameraman said, "Well, I don't know, maybe we should wait till it stops storming and the lightning." And I'm on a bike, maybe we shouldn't film this. I said, "You know what? Those guys went up there on tanks, that they knew they were outgunned." I was like, I better get my butt and just do this. I can deal with some rain and lightning. Come on, so I,
Exactly.
I better not be a wuss and not like in a little bit of a
Hey,
storm.
but you really touch on that too, Lou. You touch on that in the movie. There's a part where you talk about the guys, your grandfather and his crew were either cold, hot, wet, freezing, consistently.
Nonstop.
Not like so, I mean, we think of the worst, but then that's like these are things that a regular person who's never and I'm not talking down on anybody that's never served. That's not what I mean. But if you've never served or never done that, it's different. It's horrible. It sucks. It's different when you like, oh, it's cold outside. Let's put on a coat. Yeah, we got coats. But you go outside and you walk to your vehicle that's probably preheated already. You drive to work. You go inside work and you're in a heated building, and then you walk back to your vehicle that you're preheating. You know what I mean? You get the cold just a little bit. But the guys who work outside, construction workers, oil field workers, these guys will understand. But when you're outside and there's nowhere to go, that's just a whole nother mind game, right? It's a whole nother issue that you got to deal with. And I just found it very interesting, dude, that you could in that hour and 50 minutes that you, whether you meant to or not, you hit those wickets. So coming from a veteran, like just watching the movie, these are like little wickets. It's like I said, you were talking about you riding the bike. It took you 45 minutes, and then when you said 3 months, to the normal person, like, oh, okay. But dude, when you say I'm thinking 45-minute bike ride. That's not very far. You know what I mean? In reality, it's not very far, and it took them over 90 days to move that same distance. I could just imagine the resistance that they were up against.
It was part of that was because I remember how hard he described those fights were, and how much both he and Les Underwood talked about how brutal it was, and then going through and just biking it, and you're like leisurely, oh, I'm through this beautiful woods, I just kind of looked at my watch and thought, and I just rode through this place that was absolute hell for these people, and it took me just a few minutes. It's like you need to step back and think about those things. And with the cold and the rain, I worked construction, a greater part of my life, and so I know what it is. And most people just have no inkling what it is to be cold, and once the heat goes out of your clothes, and it's just really just your body heat, or like for them, there was no heater inside that Sherman. They could only put like their hands on the transmission. Like Grandpa said, he was down. They had the driver and assistant driver down, a little lower, but they could warm their hands up on the transmission. Whereas the guys in the turret crew, they were freezing. And what was remarkable to me, those guys sat on stools the whole time. They didn't even have like a seat with a back, like for all that time, they were in combat almost solid. Like I think it was a little over 10 months solid combat, and all they had was a stool just bouncing around in that Sherman. It was, even though it weighed 32 tons, didn't have very good traction. It had those rubber chevrons most of the time. They're kind of narrow,
Right.
and so they'd hit patches of snow, and sometimes it would just slide uncontrollably the whole tank. Imagine being in there and just like trying to fight or move down the line, and then all of a sudden the tank just goes out of whack, slides down a ditch. It was a common thing. They were really terribly outgunned. There's some different authors like Zalaga, for example, that wrote about Shermans and talks about how they were like the T-34 and they were capable. There are people that are like kind of apologists for American equipment. Like the Sherman really was a terrible tank for in straight comparison.
I'm glad you said it because I didn't want to be the guy to say it.
No, and people, it's weird because there's people that'll go, "Oh no, it was just tactics allowed it to be successful." But no, the M1 was engineered to go tank on tank. When it, if you talk to Desert Storm guys, they were knocking off, Iraqi tanks from more than a mile away to shoot at them. So, like, you don't like. Why would anybody engineer a tank that doesn't have to fight other tanks? And that was supposedly their strategy. I think it was kind of a afternote to say, oh well, we'll avoid the other tanks. Well, the Germans were some of the greatest soldiers, the greatest military there was. They're not going to allow you to just go around them.
Right, Lou. You're talking about the Bradley, right? That was the vehicle. Was it Bradley?
Oh, the Sherman.
The Sherman. I'm sorry, the Sherman. So the Sherman there. There's a part that really just it caught me like, whoa, what the hell? When the dude says, "Hey, this tank's done," and they get out, they leave the tank, right? Correct me if I say the story wrong, but they leave the tank because they think that it's messed up. Correct?
Yeah, there were 2 points that might have happened. So there was one in Normandy and one in the Battle of Bulge. So I'm trying to see which one you're talking about. Early in it, they were hit by a Panzerfaust in Normandy, and they thought the tank was penetrated.
Yeah, there you go. And then they got out of the vehicle. Yeah. But dude, for the tank, for a tank to make it that far, that what I mean. All the battles, I mean, wow.
They had a 580% loss ratio of tanks in the 3rd Armored Division. No other armored division lost more tanks than his. And most they came up against some of the best German outfits. They fought the 2nd SS. They fought the 1st SS. They fought the 7th in like near Mortain. They fought a lot of the best of Hitler's units in Normandy, in Belgium, and so like they had in early on in the war, and I talk about this in the film. In the I think it was the first 8 days of combat, they lost 87 tanks. Completely destroyed, and that was in the after action reports. So I can't imagine those guys getting back in those Shermans, knowing how outgunned they were. Like in one engagement, Grandpa's tank had a 76 millimeter. It was a little higher velocity and a little larger diameter. Most tanks had a short barrel 75, and they were in engagement with a Panther tank, which was not a Tiger, but similar armaments, but not as heavily armed and armored. And they knew they hit it. They hit it a bunch of times, but they never knocked it out that they were aware of. And they went to go check it out after fighting died down. And they had an opportunity to go actually look at it because the crew abandoned it. So Grandpa got up on the front glacis plate of that tank, and he said he counted 19 ricochets off the front of that tank where they hit it 19 times. And he said the only reason that they knocked it out was a shell lodged between the turret and the hull. And so they couldn't move the turret, and another went down in the gun guard, but the tank was never penetrated. All of those, the German crew walked out of it. So I can't imagine, shooting something 19 times. It would have been like fighting aliens, you're so outgunned.
That's amazing, man. The men and the women who served in World War II, there's not very many of them still around.
Sadly, yeah, they were
Sadly,
amazing people. Yeah.
and you're absolutely right about that generation of people. I think um, really, in military sense, they sucked it up. They sucked it up. They came home. They sucked it up. They put it in the
Right.
back of their head and it's like, hey, I got to continue on living, and and maybe they fought their own demons in their own way, right? But they were strong men, strong, and they
Right.
found a way to to go on and live a somewhat normal life. I'm just really glad that you had the chance to to hear it for yourself firsthand, because hearing it firsthand from somebody is just like I said, I'd rather sit down and listen to stories from old veterans than watch a movie any day, any day of the any day of the week. And just watching the movie, and like I said, I just picked through the book. I want to sit down and read the whole book from front to back, because books are always better, right? And
Yeah.
Lou, did did it affect Lou? Like doing you taking all this upon you, it's not like from one day to the next you're like, hey, I'm gonna do this, and boom, in 2 days you're making a movie, and then you know what I'm saying. It doesn't happen that quick. You know what I mean? This is not what you've done is not a movie, right? It takes time, it takes effort, it takes
Yeah.
years, it takes motivation, dedication. Did you ever get to a point where you were like, man, I don't know if I want to do this anymore? I mean, it's just kind of overwhelming your everyday life.
Um, yeah, I'd probably still be married if I hadn't worked on it so damn much. Like to some degree, it was especially writing a book. Uh, it was taxing on because I put so much time and effort into it. But it was actually going through a divorce and everything, and it kind of revamped it because it was something to focus on that was positive as opposed to something negative. And so I I had written the book, but then doing the film project, it just kind of allowed me to focus on something bigger than myself, than you know what was happening in my life and stuff. And I think it was therapeutic in a way, finally, because it's not about me. And a really good quotation that's in the book that I try to keep in mind was something that Eisenhower said, that he was getting closer. Uh, but what Eisenhower said, he was at he was giving a speech in England, and they were honoring a lot of the American dead. And the reason I even knew this quote was from a book that was sent to one of Grandpa's friends' parents, because he was killed in the war. His name was John Estava, and his nephew had kept a lot of the records and stuff. He was an airborne guy. He died at the Nijmegen Bridge. And I was flipping through this book and found that speech that Eisenhower gave. And he said, humility must always be a portion of any man who gains a claim in the blood, from the blood of his followers and the sacrifices of his friends. And I, I think that's just kind of a sentiment that we don't hear enough now. And I just feel like it's all about me, me, me. Who am I? And hey, look at me. And the whole selfie culture, and I think that's taken away a lot of what it is to be a community, what it is to be a human. And I think we're going to suffer from that. And we're suffering from it now because it should be about all of us sticking together. I think people were able to do great things because they worked together and thought a little more selflessly than we do now. And I think it's a big problem. I see it rippling kind of through a lot of what we do. So, but to your point, it's like, yeah, it was tough, but it's also been uh, an honor to do it. And even though it's like I kind of work on it and I kind of put it on the shelf and kind of go back to it, uh, I feel like it's a very important thing, and I don't ever want to kind of just put it to the wayside. It's bigger than myself, and so that's why it's
Well, Lou,
very important.
yeah, here on Bumpers Wacky Wednesday, again, like I said, we go from one side to the other. We can go from joking to something very serious, right? One thing, and again, I talked to you about this offline. One thing that caught me, that hit me very emotionally in the movie, where like I paused it and is like just sucking it all in, was a part where you were talking about, your grandfather and your grandmother being very proud of where they come from, very proud of being Polish.
Right.
And I can relate because I'm very proud of my culture. My show, if you ever watch, if you ever go back and watch the shows, I always talk about my culture. I never want my culture to die, and it means so much to me. And I want my kids. I want it to mean the same to my kids, so my grandkids can get the same thing, and my great grandkids can, like, hey, your great grandfather really was big on our culture. But
Because there's so many lessons within that, and I think we're throwing
exactly,
them away. There's so many life lessons and things that you can learn even from the subtleties of it.
yeah. But when in the movie, you're kneeling over your bike, I believe, and I see it. I can hear it in your voice. I can see it in your in your facial gestures, that it overcame you. That part of talking about your grandparents being very proud, um, Polish, uh, being very proud from being from Poland. It really hit me that it hit you. You felt it, like you were like, man, you know what, my grandparents really loved being where they were from. My grandmother used to sing Polish songs, even to her later days in life. You know what I mean? They never really forgot where they came from. And
Right.
and you know all the Polish people that I've ever come across, anybody that ends with a ski that I've ever had in the Marine Corps, have been some tough son of a bitches. Like hands down, they just
Yeah.
could really relate to them. They just had really tough upbringings, um, and their work ethic was unmatched. You know what I mean? They're hard workers, man. And the story we talked about earlier about your dad running into his friend and just stuff. Just, I mean, your grandfather. I think it's awesome because it's real, dude. It's not a movie. This is not
Yeah.
this really happened. You
Right.
know.
Right.
But
Yeah. I think probably I didn't mean to cut you
no,
off,
you're
but
good. You're good.
just to say, to explain a little bit of why that was such a powerful thing. Because at that monument, and I don't know if you could tell, it's in kind of the B footage, but there's three markers at that uh, monument, and what the monument is to is the Polish stood their ground against the German SS, some of the most elite, Panzer groups at that Mont Ormel, and they had been beaten down. The Poles were run through in 1939, and most people don't know that the Russians attacked from the other side, so they split the country in half. So they didn't even have a chance. They didn't have a very advanced army, but they were fighting a war on two fronts, and so they were swept away. And so when I saw that, and there's a marker carved in English. There's a marker carved in French, and then another in Polish. And when I saw all those three, to commemorate, I just knew it would have meant the world for my grandfather to see that and be there at that spot. And we had talked about going there before he passed away, but he passed away in 2013. But I'm honestly, I'm kind of thankful in a weird way that he didn't live to see that movie Fury, because I think it would have really hurt him. Like, I
You've
think
been disappointed.
he would have been. Yeah.
Let's flip it, Lou. Let's flip that real quick.
Yeah.
How would he have felt watching your movie?
I think he would have been honored. I think he would have been very happy with it, to say the least. I mean, he was really excited when it's in the book in like the first few pages, where I showed him the rough draft, and coming back again. But I showed him the rough draft, and he read it, and I kind of expected him to have some critique and say, "Oh, well, this didn't happen exactly in that way or this way." And I asked him, well, Grandpa, what did you think of it? And he said, "I liked it. It was really good." But I was like, "Hey, it's a 380-page book about your life and all the stuff you went through. You got to have something, some criticism or something I didn't get right. There has to be something." And he just smiled and just said, "No, I really liked it. It was really good." And with like kind of red-eyed, he just like grabbed me by the shoulder and said, he was just honored that somebody told his story. And again, he was very humble because he knew how many friends that didn't come back. It wasn't. It's about him, but it's not. It's not just about him. It's about.
It's about his generation.
Right. Exactly. And that's the way he would have wanted it. He didn't want it to be like, hey, he's this big hero. It was more like he's just an example of the type of man that went through this.
Right.
And that was what was important to him.
I feel him. You know what I mean? I when you're talking this way and him looking at you, I mean, I could just imagine his feelings. You know what I mean? Like, what can you say to something like that? What can you say to your grandson who's dedicated all this time and even lost his marriage? I'm just saying. I'm just,
I'm just kidding on it.
You dedicated a big portion of your life to honor your grandfather and his generation. You did. And you did it. That movie is amazing. That movie needs to be, on Hulu, on Netflix, on it, if somebody ever watches this interview, The Path of the Past needs to be, I think everybody needs, it needs to be in every history class in America needs to watch it, because it's really genuine, dude. It's very, very genuine. And that's what I really dug about it. That it was very genuine. And speaking to you, you here in the interview, you're a genuine person, bro. You know what I mean? For you to just throw it out there like, hey, I might have maybe even lost a little bit of my marriage due to my focus on getting this done and honoring my grandfather. That says a lot about you, dude. That says so much about the character and the person that your grandfather helped mold, in a sense. And Lou, dude, whatever you're doing, like whatever you have planned, if you put the same effort that you put into this, dude, it's gold, bro. I mean, I was gonna say neta. Like that's a little slang Spanish word, like really, bro, like, you know what I mean, like truthfully, neta, like hey, sorry, man, my South Texas came out on me, but no, if you put the way you put towards a documentary and towards a book, dude, I mean, I see nothing but, you know, anything that you put your hands in is gonna be good. Lou, how was it?
On that point, though,
Go ahead.
our mutual friend James and I are working on something to do a series on the Third Armored, and we haven't, you know, hammered out all the details, but it's looking like it could come together, and it'll be kind of the antithesis of you know, Hollywood version. It's going to be the total opposite of that. Like and it's going to have a lot of veteran influence, to say the least. And
Bro, let me be a side in it. I want to call it right now. Let me. I want to be, even if I'm just taking a piss off a tank on the back or something. You know what I mean? I'll do it. I'll volunteer.
Oh well, it would be awesome. The goal is to make it to where it has no glamorization or BS. It's just a real story, and as much as we can stick to the historical truth, and then where we run into places where we have to develop characters and stuff, we're going to talk to veterans about that and get help with that. Now, I don't want to tell everything about it's a cool,
no, definitely not. No, hell yeah, I get you.
but I think people are really going to like it. We're going to have kind of a 2-part podcast where the first part is telling the story like a kind of an old school radio show,
Mm-hmm.
and getting into the characters, and then the second part will be kind of telling, okay, where did we extrapolate, where did we diverge from what we know to be historical fact, where do we have to put some fiction in, and then give people so that they know we didn't just do it on a whim. And that's one of the biggest problems I've seen in Hollywood. And every time I talk to a veteran, a lot of them can't even watch military-based films and stuff because they're such BS, and they don't even take.
I was
the
going
time
to say that if you ever watch a movie with a veteran, like a veteran that's been across the water somewhere, and they get up in the first 5-10 minutes of a movie, they're not even going to say nothing to you. They're just going to walk away.
Yeah,
I'm telling you why they're walking away, right? I'm telling you exactly why they're walking away, right? But if they stay and they're intrigued, you know, some of the new movies that I can relate to, some of them are pretty good. You know what I mean? They do a pretty good job of recreating things. Some of them are just straight bullshit. You know what I mean?
Well, like my grandfather, he did start opening up one of the movies that he did see that he was really respectful of was Saving Private Ryan.
He liked that one.
Yeah, he did. He said that the sounds and the uniforms and even the sounds of the tanks, they really did their work. Maybe the storyline and the narrative's kind of BS, but the overall production was very well done in the sense of making it as accurate as possible in the combat scenes and stuff.
I heard the same thing with the Clint Eastwood one. The Clint Eastwood in the Pacific. What is that one called? The one.
Yeah, I never saw that one, yeah.
But that was more the island campaign. I think that was. In
Flags of Our Fathers.
What is it again?
Flags of Our Fathers.
That's it. I dug that one. Hey man, they're 5 minutes late, dude. I just saw the news. It said till 8:45. It's 8:50, and the tornado horn's still going on. So.
It's a done deal, man.
But Lou, dude, it's really just cool to speak to somebody like you, and you know, I've had 6 weeks in a row with different music artists, and to speak to somebody who's done a film, done a book, it's different for me. It really is. Like all day today, I kept thinking like, man, how's the show gonna go? Like you know what I mean? Lou's not gonna sing. We're not gonna talk about his next single. where he's playing at next week. But I'm very intrigued, dude. Like a lot of people don't know this about me, but I love history. That was my absolute favorite subject in school. I mean, since I was little, history was just my favorite subject. And being in the military and being able to travel to some ugly places in the world, your story is very accurate. Your story is very very your grandfather's story. You did a good job, bro. You really did. And
That means a
from
lot.
from a veteran,
Wow.
I'll tell you, for me to catch all those little things that I've been talking about in the movie, those are just little
Sure,
things.
tell with the detail. That
Yes, you know what I mean. Like there's just little things that I'm looking for. You know what I mean? That just like popped out to me, and I can really, as a military guy, I can relate to it. But Lou, what do you go back to Illinois? Do you go back and revisit the fishing hole that where a lot of these stories took place?
I'll go there here and there, but actually, it's kind of a sad part of the story is that Shoal Creek's pretty polluted from the runoff. Like the EPA has said, there's a lot of issues with basically like too much fertilizer, and then like farm runoff from cattle farms and stuff like that. So it's they recommend not to even really eat the fish out of there. So it's kind of a bitter pill. But I still do basically the techniques and the same type of thing, and still fish that way all the time, even with some family. My dad recently passed away, which was a really tough one. He had cancer, and he was always all about going fishing and still catfishing and stuff like that. But my uncle, my cousins, my brother, we get together and fish when we can. But try to keep the traditions alive. But when you were saying though, as a veteran about the story and about it being realistic and true to form, I think one of the coolest. It just came to mind. There was a guy at one of my book events when I first got the book out. It was probably one of the coolest compliments I've ever had. I spoke and showed a bit about the book, and this fellow stood up, older gentleman, probably in his 80s or whatever at the time, and I didn't know who he was, and he just said, I just want to tell you, he said, I'll buy your book, but you need to spell my damn name right. And and I said, I'm sorry that I don't know who you are. And he said on page whatever, he rattled off the page number. He said, I'm on that page, and there's a picture of him in there, and he was on my grandpa's basketball team, and from his high school, and there's this high school basketball picture, and he was like one of the I wouldn't call him like a bench guy or whatever, but he didn't play all the time or whatever. But he said I missed one, but Grandpa wasn't big on spelling, so I thought a lot of these guys had passed on. I tried to look into finding them, but this guy happened to show up at the book event, and so I said, "Oh, I'll fix it." And he said, but eventually he said, I'm just messing with you. He said, I want that fixed. He said, but I just want to tell you, I don't think you could have done a better job telling the story. And to get that from him, and it turned out he was in the Battle of the Bulge. He also served in the Army. He grew up with my grandfather. He knew him very well. And to get that from him was just like, wow, thank you. I couldn't thank him enough. It was if he felt I did justice to it, then I did a good job, and
Lou,
that's
you're a
real.
better man than me, dude. I'm tearing up right now, bro. I'm being real with you. Like just hearing that, I could imagine you talking to a room full of people. I'm picturing an auditorium full of people,
Yeah,
and
my
some man just stand up and tell you that. Like,
yeah.
how do you? what do you do? Like, you're excited, you're happy, but at the same time, like, yeah, I'm sorry I messed up your name. But
Yeah, I did a correct, like it was because I did it the independent way. I was able to correct it pretty quick, and I sent him I got his address and shipped him a book as soon as I had some new ones printed. So it was pretty cool. It was a fellow named Gerald Jenner. Uh,
I'm still here, Lou. I'm still here.
yeah,
No, man.
that was cool. That was a hell of an experience.
Man, dude. Wow.
There's been many throughout this, so it's like I feel like got to keep it going, try to get it out there in front of more people, and hopefully the series will do that. I mean the film's on Tubi, and it's supposed to be on some other, perhaps Amazon and some other place. They're my distributor is talking about a DVD deal and some other type, but it's been very slow going, which has been kind of stressful. But I think a documentary film that wasn't a theatrical release is a little tougher to get out there, I guess. But once people see it, they really appreciate it. Typically,
I- I'm gonna I'm gonna wind it down here just a little bit. Um, Either you told me or it was in the movie. I think you told me.
what's that?
And the reason I'm pausing for effect because it's very, for me, it was just touching. And when you said that you and your grandfather visited a museum, and I think he said something like, I guess we don't get it yet, or something like that.
Yeah, uh, oh, uh, we went to Benning, which was that was an amazing experience because it was my dad, my grandfather, and myself, three generations of our family. We all flew down to Fort Benning for his final formal reunion, and he didn't go to the Third Armored Division reunions. That was the first one he ever went to, and it was the final one that they had for the World War II guys. And he he was hoping to meet a lot of guys, and he was excited. And unfortunately, not hardly any that he knew made it because there were just too few. I can't even remember the number. I think it was under 20 or something guys that actually made it down. But what was cool, he went and talked to like every military person that he met along the way. We were in the airport, and there's obviously a lot. It was like a Columbus, Georgia, there,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of Army guys everywhere, men and women. And he, at one point, he went up to a fella that was like he looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger in fatigues. I mean, just monster guy. Like I was just seeing it. Like I just kind of looked. I was like, oh man, I don't want to mess with that guy. And Grandpa walked past him, and he saw his hat with his campaign bar, all his campaign stars on it. And the guy they shook hands, and he started talking to him, and he stood up, and they had a conversation. I couldn't hear; it was a little far away from where I was sitting. But Grandpa, like at the end of the conversation, kind of got close to him and whispered something in his ear. And that guy that looked like such an imposing figure, a couple seconds ago, he got choked up, and he, you could tell he was just, I mean, like a tear rolled down his face, and they shook hands and they embraced. And he was just walked off, and that guy sat down and straightened himself out, and I, it was so amazing to me to see. It was like they were both, apart probably 60 years in age, or maybe even a little more, but they were brothers when they talked, and it was like, there was a connection there that they had that you can't put into words. And I I was just astonished at that exchange. He tried to do that kind of everywhere he went uh, with people, but I never knew what he said to him. But it was just a lot of things like that that happened along the whole trip. He thought about all like men like yourself that served in Iraq. He was constantly thinking about everybody that was serving all the time. He read the paper every day. He was and he would say, I think about those men and women every night, because I know what it's like, and so but yeah, so it was just a really powerful experience. And then we went to that museum, what you were talking about, walking through the museum. Uh, Dad and I were walking through in the infantry museum right outside of Benning, and Dad just was looking around and noticed, all the different eons of the war. There's uh, different infantry men, and in uniforms of the period and stuff, and they have like these exhibits, set up for the time, and it goes through, World War One, and then World War Two, and Korea, Vietnam, and my dad just turned to my grandfather and said, "Dad, do we ever learn a damn thing?" You know, and Grandpa said, maybe not. He's just like, don't seem like we do. And um, not that he was any kind of pacifist. He was always for being ready and able, but it's also, I think, the more and more we kind of get complacent and kind of step away from our history, the more easily things like that can happen again. I think because people are getting off track. But yeah, that's why I think this story is very important, and I hope people kind of heed the lessons of it. But you know,
Yeah.
it's
Lou, man, dude, believe it or not, I've been on a roller coaster ride with you in just the hour and a half that we've been on. You know what I mean? Like, um, I didn't think the interview would kind of be this way. I thought it was just gonna, kind of be straightforward. But I think just because it's so relatable, it's so
yeah,
relatable, man. And no matter if it was 75 years ago or 2 years ago, I mean, war's war. Some is
right,
a lot uglier than others, and my biggest regret is that people like your grandfather, people that fought World War II, people fought in Korea, people fought in Vietnam. A lot of these guys, World War II a little bit. You show the ticker parades and stuff like that, but um, some of these guys, they just you go from that to just coming home. You just come home and you just, hey, you're done. Thank you for your service. Leave your uniform at the door. You show up to your hometown and you're just expected just to pick up and
right,
get a normal job and be a normal human being. And I think some civilians don't really get it. It's hard. It's a very difficult thing to do. Sometimes to just get through a day. Some days are better than others. I'm really glad that you had that Marine on there that was a specialist in the post traumatic stress and stuff, because he shed light from a different angle. You know what I'm saying? Like, he just hearing him,
yeah,
he was attacking from a whole different angle, and it took you away from you thinking a certain way. Like, oh, okay, this makes sense. Um,
right, right,
but dude,
yeah,
it's just. I'm glad. I'm very glad that Kata introduced introduced us, and we got to do this, um, because I would never have seen that movie. It would have never came across. Maybe one day I would have, but maybe I wouldn't have. And I'm just glad that I did, because it was very, very touching, dude. To say the least. To say the least. Like, if you guys haven't seen it, it's called The Path of the Past. I will put up if you follow me on Facebook on both my the Bumpers Wacky Wednesday page and my personal Facebook, I'll put the link up there for you guys to go up and watch it. I think you got to verify your age, right, Lou? Something I think you got to verify your age or something. It asked me, I don't know. I said I'm old enough to drink a beer, but I don't know if they wanted me to watch it or not.
Yeah, maybe it was. I guess Tubi, verifies. Yeah, you're at least 18 or 21.
Yeah.
Because they have maybe alcohol ads on there.
Dude, it's just a great movie, man. Great. I can't wait to dig into the book. Lou, if there was anything that you could, if your grandfather was around now, is there anything that you think you would, would have said to him after the fact of you making after you making the movie? You know what I mean? Like, let me rephrase that. After making the trip to Europe and going, following his path, if you could have, a 5-minute conversation with him, people say like if you could always just talk to one person, that's passed, what would you say to him? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but hey, it's Wacky Wednesday, man. These questions just come to me, if you had 5 minutes to speak with them or just to talk to him, after the fact that you made that path and made the movie, what do you think you'd say to him?
Well, I probably wouldn't, if I could talk to him, I'd probably ask him some questions about the afterlife, first, like, hey, can you like, how is it over there, man?
Yeah,
like,
I got you.
How's the chow, how's it going? But, that's probably, no one's ever asked me that. And I think, maybe it's strange to say, but I feel like I'm thankful enough that I did all this. I spent all the time. There wasn't much unsaid, between us. Like I felt like I would feel like maybe I could talk to him about like details about the towns and stuff like that I got to see that then we could interact about how Mons, Belgium looked and how France and different cities and stuff. But like in general, from a real like deep perspective, it was like I'm very lucky. I feel like it was all said. Like I don't ever feel like I left anything like unsaid with my grandfather. We were tight, and I was very I'm blessed in that respect that I got to know the man until he was 90, and that we were that tight. So that's part of the reason telling it. Most people don't ever have the opportunity to know somebody that went through that much stuff and then know them that well, and then also have a good relationship with them. Because some people go through that and they won't communicate. They won't be that person. So I was just very lucky. But
no, I think it's amazing because it's one thing hearing the story from your grandfather firsthand. And it's another thing actually picking up a bike and going over there and living it. You're not living it in a sense where you, right? But just the fact that you were walking, that's the way I feel when I visit historic sites. Like I'm walking on the same site that this happened. Like you can sit there and kind of just imagine like you were walking through the forest and it was thick. You know what I mean? Like you could just imagine warfare in there, how it was like, you know what I mean? How it must have just sucked for those guys. You know what I mean? Being there and smelling it and just walking through it is totally different than watching a movie or seeing it in a book or, you know what I mean? Oh yeah. You get the whole vibe. And, I just kind of, is that you or me?
that's not me.
What the heck is that?
Got a new Texas tornado alarm. different type of alarm. That's
I don't
hail.
know what that was.
That's the new hail sign.
Is that the hell sign? I don't know, bro. Oh my goodness.
Just make it.
But no, Lou, I wanted to ask you that, like, you know what I mean? Because sometimes people, say, well, I would have been there, or this, that, and the other. But that was a great answer, man. Great answer. Lou, I want to thank you, bro. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for hanging out with me, for agreeing to do the show. I know you've done other podcasts.
Yeah, but I enjoy it. I really do, and it's great to talk to somebody like yourself that's a veteran and has a connection to this. And a lot of people just have no idea. No, it's just like when I've seen stuff about war films and they talk about it about entertainment, and it's hard for me to see. Well, how's that? It should be you get something. Yeah, not entertained, but you should learn something from it. You should uh, get some wisdom from it. Entertainment never registers in my mind when it comes to like something that was really horrible for somebody to go through, and um, I think not enough people kind of step outside themselves and think about that when they watch like a movie of somebody going through something really miserable, some arduous task, and oh, I was entertained by that. Like, no, that was pretty miserable for that person, or whatever it may
Definitely.
be. It's like you got to step outside and think about how that really was. And, I was just really glad.
Somebody's saying that that might be your grandfather sending us a sign that he's
That
watching, bro.
he was quite a joker, man. He was really funny. He had a really dry sense of humor, so he'd be all about that. So I wouldn't put that past him.
I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah.
Lou, before I let you go, I gotta do this because I gotta pay bills around here, bro. Tonight's show is brought to you by the Steven Gonzalez Agency. If you're looking for auto, life, home, or business insurance, you can reach him at 210-625-8797. Hit up my boy Steve. He will take care of you. I promise you. He just took care of my mom like today and yesterday. The dude goes out of the way for you. So again, if you're looking for any kind of insurance, auto, life, home, or business, hit up my buddy Steve Gonzalez at 210-625-8797. But again, Lou, dude, totally different vibe from many shows that I've done, and I'm digging it. Like I liked it. You know what I mean? It's just.
Glad you did it. So did I.
I hope you enjoyed kind of like, I don't have a script, man. That's where I base my show off, is kind of just conversation. You know what I mean? Your story, your grandfather's story is amazing, bro. And the way you went about doing it and honoring it is something else, dude. You know what I mean? You really put a lot of time and a lot of effort into what you did. And to the viewers, if you're gonna watch it, if you're watching it tonight, or if you're not, I'll have this on YouTube. I'll send Lou. I'll send you the link so you can always share it. Hey, I did this interview. We'll talk about.
Please do.
This is the movie, The Path of the Past, right? The Path of the Past. Look for it. It's on. What's the name of the?
It's on Tubi.
Tubi.
And actually, the new subtitle, that's the older, a little bit older poster, but the new subtitle is The Untold True Story of Fury.
That's it. That's what. Yeah, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry that I didn't have that. But The Untold True Story of Fury, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it's on Tubi, which is it really common to find. Like it's on any internet TV setup, Roku or any of that, you could just find Tubi, and then they just search Path of the Past.
No, dude, I'm telling you, I'm gonna watch it again, and I might just call you, and be like, "Hey, Lou, what about this or what about that?" Because when you watch something twice, you catch shit that you didn't catch the first time.
Right.
So
yeah, probably if the one thing that was probably the most remarkable, like some of those, and I don't know if it comes across well enough in the film, but all that stuff just happened organically. Like meeting those people and stuff like that. I mean, I didn't have a big budget. I mean, it was a summer from school teaching. I had a former student of mine that got into film, and he said, "Hey, I could film it for you for cheap." He's like riding in a car. We got a rental car and shoved all this gear in there, and like don't speak any French. Like like going from town to town. Like I just had paper maps, and then this kid, he didn't even know how to read a map. Like, and he's like, you couldn't get a cell phone use over there, so there was no GPS or anything.
What do you mean there ain't Google Maps or Waze over here, man? Come on.
So I mean, it was we couldn't, like, cell phone service is different in Europe, you know. So like we couldn't use our cell phones there. So like we didn't have GPS or anything. We just got around with maps, you know.
Hey, if you guys are watching, you can't click on what I put up here, but thanks to You Found Music, our buddy Sarge, Carter, he posted the link. So if you click on the link, you can definitely go watch the movie there on Tubi. Thanks, Carter. I appreciate you doing that for us.
Thanks,
but Lou, again, dude, a big thank you, bro, for giving me your evening, and just hanging out, dude, and talking about it. I know we could have gone way deeper into the details of but then again, I don't want to give the whole damn movie away. You know, I want people to go and kind of do me a favor to the viewers, whether you watch this now live or you watch this later on YouTube, wherever you watch it, come back to here and write us a comment. Let us know what you thought about the movie. That'd be really cool. You know, these videos stay on forever. I think it'd be something really cool for Lou to come back and because sometimes you don't get that, right? I mean, people write reviews, people who are, movie critics and stuff, but to the everyday person, you know what I mean? Where can an everyday person write? Of course, anybody can go on social media and be like, "Hey, I love this movie," you know what I'm saying? But come back here and let us know what you think of the movie. And before I let you off the hook, Lou, where can people get this book?
It's available on Amazon and also Barnes and Noble. If they just look up Louch, but it's
the way you see it there, Luch.
Yeah, that was
his nickname.
He was Polish, so my great grandmother called him Luchik, and so like the neighborhood kids just kind of morphed it around into Luch.
That's how nicknames happen, man. You mean it to come out one way, and I mean, look at my name. I'm named after the front of a damn car. But no, Lou, I'm gonna get you off the hook here. I'm gonna talk a little bit about next week, Lou. But thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. From my military family to yours, dude. Thank you for putting the time and effort into keeping that memory and keeping that history alive. Because this is what people need to see. This is what people need to read and know, what America's been through. You know what I mean? And not only that, but people of different ethnicities that fought for this great country.
Immigrants, yeah.
Immigrants, exactly. You said it. That's what I found it really touched my heart. And again, Lou, thank you so much, bro. I really, really appreciate you coming on here and giving me your evening. If you're ever in San Antonio, hit me up. If you come near for a reunion, for any historian, hit me up, dude. I will take you to eat, have some cold ones, whatever the case may be. But I look forward to it, man.
I'm going to take you up on that. So because I have family in Dallas, so
okay,
I'm down in Texas quite often. So.
All right, man. I'll be waiting for you.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure. So thanks so much for your time, and it's been great talking with you.
All right, Lou. You have a great evening, man. Thank you.
You do the same.
All right.
Thank you.
That was Mr. Lou, man. What a great interview, dude. Like, literally, guys, if you guys have not seen that you got to go and watch it. The link is there. They ain't charging you. You know what I'm saying? Just go look at it. It's a great movie. Next week, man. Next week is gonna be Cinco de Mayo. Yes, Cinco de Mayo is already next Wednesday. So on the whole Cinco de Mayo thing, you know how we like to get down Bumpers Wacky Wednesday. We're gonna take it back. We're gonna take it back old school to the original way we used to do Bumpers Wacky Wednesday. But I'm gonna have a guest. So I'm giving you a whole week to get your beer ready, to get your liquor ready, to get whatever you drink and have a good time with. You make sure that you have that next Wednesday, right? You make sure that you have that next Wednesday. And at 7:30, you're ready to rock and roll Central Time because we're going to party. My special guest next week is going to be DJ Aftermath, right? Devin Garcia. Look up I should have put his TikTok on here. This guy, he's very, very popular and very, very funny on TikTok. He does the Don't React challenges. He's gonna actually be at our event that we're having on the 22nd of Bevo. He's gonna be a special guest. He'll be out there meet and greet with people. But I'm gonna have him here in the studio. The dude is funny as hell. He's going to be co-hosting with me. We're going to have a bunch of drinking games. You never know. It's going to be wacky, man, for sure. So again, stay tuned next week. Devin Garcia, DJ Aftermath, will be my special guest in the studio. From me, man, thank you guys for hanging out. Those of you that were looking for another musician, but you found this instead. You never know what you're going to get, man. Bumpers Wacky Wednesday, another episode in the books. Thanks to Lou. Make sure you watch the movie. Make sure you buy the book. We greatly appreciate you watching. Check out my YouTube channel, right? I always forget about that. Go to my YouTube channel, Bumper Gomez. Like, subscribe, and share. I would greatly appreciate it. Again, Bumper Gomez on YouTube. Y'all have a good week. Stay safe. If you're in San Antonio, buckle down. Them tornadoes are coming. Y'all be good. Out.